So, a few things. Let's start at the top. I try not to kind of be dismissive of traditional PE. It's a massive space. I'm this small player in a hyper niche, and for many things, I think it comes down to where you are at in your journey and what you're prioritizing for. And my beef with traditional PE is threefold. Number one, the incentive is to be raising as much, assets under management as possible because a large part of how folks get paid in the short term are their fees. And so, it's really tricky to make a, 30, 40, $50 million PE fund work. Right. There's just not enough money to like hire all your staff and like it just gets really wonky. The second issue is most great folks that I know spent years, not weeks or months. They spent years on their LP raising, and maybe they raised their first fund in 6 months, 12 months, 18, what have you. But when you look at the cum of the time they spent on the road, having dinners, getting LPs to wire them money and sign agreements, it's years. And I just look at that as something I don't get energized around. But the third, which I think is the most to me egregious, is because of how the financial incentives are set up. They're not really there's no bar that holds them accountable to make sure they do the right thing with a business. Now, many GPs out there are amazing, but it's a world where we know how folks show up and split a company for parts. The LBOs that I think they started in the '60s, they got popular in the '80s, where they just load up the debt, do a crazy distribution, and then if they can pay the debt, great. If not, you're already on to the next deal. There's just so much, there's so many incentives for you to not run the business properly. And so I like to set that as a context on like why I wanted to do something different. And so when you do have extreme leverage, let's say you're running a $50 million PE fund. The problem with that is you actually aren't making that much money unless you are trying to flip these things as fast as possible. Whereas if we now shift to, my neck of the woods, you only have 10, $12 million, like you can get a lot of mileage. And if you just look on your cash on cash return and the time invested, you actually will typically make more than that person running that, that 50 plus, million dollar hedge or private equity firm. And then once you get to, large numbers, 150, 200, billion plus under management. Sure, like that's where you see the crazy numbers. And it is ironic when you look at, kind of a Forbes list or what have you, it's usually hedge fund folks and private equity folks. You don't see a ton of VC folks on that list, right? Now, part of that is just because of how the carry hits and the time horizon on many of these things. But in general, it's that crazy leverage of other people's money that is how the extremes are winning. But the average, PE investor, they're making $1 million, $2 million a year. I just look at that and it's like, that's way too much work for $1 million a year. And so, kind of back to kind of the anchor, when I think about, diligence, it's pretty straightforward. First thing I'm going to do is to say, does it fall in one of my buckets? I can qualify that. Then I will have, typically we'll get a teaser or some type of SIM, confidential information memorandum. And that's basically the basics. That's like, when everything goes right, they tell these flowery stories. Like, here's how, you're going to be so excited that you bought this company. And through that process, I'm trying to quickly get a sense of why I would regret, buying this, 2, 3 years from that point. And really, that's what I'm trying. I'm not trying to talk myself into the deal. I'm trying to talk myself out of the deal. And in parallel for that, if I look and say, like, I think there's something here, I'll go have my CPA, not like a fractional CFO or somebody who's doing something fancy. Just go look at the books, look for anomalies, and look for funky stuff.